Okay, hi, Chris Tiller again with Russ Lyons Sotheby's Realty. Today we're going to be talking about the appraisal process. So more than likely, congratulations, you're under contract and we are in through inspections. But if not, there is going to be some good general information here that you can review at any time. But yes, so the appraisal is now taking place. So this is really from a buyer's perspective or a seller's perspective. But an appraisal is the banks or the lending or whoever's giving you money to purchase the house. It's going to be their estimation of value. There's supposed to be a third-party blind assignment from the bank. We've kind of done some transitions over the last 10, 15 years with the Dodd-Frank Act to make sure that, again, there's no internal relationship and funny business going on. So it's no one's going to know who's coming out. We don't know the company that's getting assigned. We're not supposed to be able to influence them or leave gift cards on the counter and stuff like that that used to happen back in the crazy days. Again, third-party assignment, but again, it's a representation of the bank who's going to be financing it. It's their way to kind of protect themselves on the value of the house so that it's not overvalued. So that's who does the appraisal. Now, this usually happens after the inspection period. So most of the time, from a buyer's perspective, you're going to order this after you get through inspections. The reason you do that is you're going to incur a cost. So the appraisal fee that comes along with it, you don't want to have to incur that if you're buying a house that you're not going to buy. So for instance, if you get the inspection done, you realize the AC's out, the seller's not willing to do it, but you've already paid for an appraisal, well, you're not going to close on a house that doesn't have a working AC unit. And if the seller's not willing to do it, you're obviously not going to buy it. So why incur that expense going up front? So we usually wait until after the inspection period to do that. The appraisal is actually a very quick process from the appointment perspective. They're in the house, it's very quick. COVID's kind of created a little bit issues. Sometimes they're doing these what's called drive-by appraisals where they just take pictures from the outside. So we have some underwriting desktop appraisal software where if they feel like the value of the house is, and they're confident enough that it's at market, they may not even come in the house, but most of the time they are. So what happens is they come in, they take pictures, they take measurements. It's pretty general. It's not an inspection. It's not going to take 4 hours, 3 hours. It could be anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour, depending on the size of the house and intricacies of it. If there's anything else in the appraisal that creates some funkiness, but it's very, very quickly. There's no reason to leave the house. It's always nice if you do because it just creates less of a inconvenience for the appraiser, and we're trying to make it as easy on them as we can. So what happens when the appraisal comes back? So they go back to the office, they submit their opinion of value, they know what the contract price is, and it's very common for the appraisal to come back at the contract price. So how does that happen? Well, from an economic standpoint, you have a buyer and a seller who have agreed on a valuation. So economics says that that's the value of the house. So that is a lot of the reason if you want to think of it that way. But the other reason is if it comes in low, there's a couple things we can do here, but let's start out with a high. So let's say you offer and you're under contract at $400,000, but the appraiser comes in and says it's worth $420,000. The reason they won't necessarily come in and write $420 on the appraisal is because they're at risk, their license as an appraiser is at risk should something happen with the loan. So let's say you don't pay on the loan or the loan isn't paid on and you go into foreclosure and the thing goes at auction for $350,000, and now that's the new value of the house. They could be held liable for some form of a discrepancy in the value of the house versus what it went under contract for. So they want to make sure they get as close as possible to the value of the house and not overestimate. So even if you have a house that you've gotten at a discount or is valued at more, they will typically come in at the purchase price. So the most I've really seen above appraisal on a normal financed house of 10 to 20% down or down even to VA, FHA is you might get a couple of grand here or there, but it's a rounding error. It's nothing that's going to be significant. So on the low appraisals, so that's been happening more often than not in hot markets. So if you have a seller's market where you get multiple offers and people go above list price, you might get a low appraisal. So let's say you have a contract at $400,000, comes back at $380,000. What do? So the bank has now said that we don't believe this house is worth what the contract is at. We will only lend up to the value of $380,000. So that's not saying that you can get a loan for $380,000. That's saying that your loan program will only go up to $380,000. So if you've agreed to put 20% down, again, it's still 20% down of $380,000. So we have a gap, $380,000 to $400,000. Where does that come from? Well, like anything in the contract, that becomes a negotiation. So it can come from a couple different places. The seller can agree to pay for it, which has been most common historically, is the seller has said, okay, I now understand and agree that a third-party valuation has said that my house is more than it's actually worth, and they've come down in their pricing, because a buyer typically doesn't have an extra $20,000 laying around to make up the difference. So depending on the situation, it used to be and can still be common where a seller has agreed to come down in some form to make up the difference. The other portion is a buyer can come up. So they can say, okay, I agree that the house is maybe overvalued, but I'm willing to pay above the appraisal price. But the bank won't pay you or lend you any more than that. So any dollar above the appraised value, you have to pay in addition to your loan down payment. So if you're paying 20% down on $380, if it comes in at $385, you have to pay, if you'd agreed, the $5,000 above. So it'd be 20% down plus $5,000. Another common thing is you meet halfway in the middle. So the seller comes down halfway and the buyer comes up the other halfway and meet in the middle. And then any variety of that can happen all of the time. So those are common situations that happen. So how do we influence this? So from a buyer's perspective or a seller's perspective. So if you think that it's going to come in low, or you have reason to believe that the house is worth more than what maybe the comps support, there's ways that you can help assist this. So as a listing agent or a buyer's agent, I can help this by a couple different reasons. I put together what's called I call an appraisal package. So I will put together the comps that I think that they should use. That's where the paperwork process comes in with the listing appointment to justify the value. So we include all the upgrades lists with any receipts that were used. So new flooring, new countertops, new AC units, new roof. We start adding all of this stuff up and create a really nice package for them. I do it electronically formatted as well as in the booklet that we give them so they can take away. Because you never know what's going to be easiest in their work process in completing the appraisal. You just want to make it as easy as possible. So I'll include, like I said, all the comps, all of the justifications. And if for some reason you wanted to justify, for instance, a lower value, you could do that as well. You could use just the flip side of that. So again, possible outcomes of that, again, you can meet in the middle, but it's not uncommon, depending on the situation, where you could lose the house. So, or the offer, depending on listing or buy side. So if you guys aren't willing to meet in the middle and we have disagreements on valuation of the house, or the buyer is incapable of making up the difference with cash, we may fall out of escrow. So the appraisal process is very important. There's three major, I call them the three processes to a contract. So it's finding the house and getting a contract accepted, step one. Step two is the inspections, and step three is the appraisals. If you can get through those three, you have a really, really good shot of closing on a house. So that third process of the appraisal is the big one. So not all loans are the same, and not all appraisals are the same. So there's some higher risk appraisals for sure. Any of the government-backed loans originally just come with some more strict criteria, as you would expect from any government type of a situation. So for instance, VA, the veterans loans from any vets that have the ability to take out a VA loan. It's a zero down loan. It's a high risk appraisal just because they have some stricter requirements on the condition of the house. They're a little bit more careful on the valuations. They don't kind of lean aggressive. FHA is the same, so another government-backed loan, 3.5% down loan. And then any of the low down payment conventionals, they have some 3% and 5% low down payment conventional loans that just create a little bit of a risk standpoint from a seller perspective if you think you're pushing that appraised value. So it's one of the processes that takes place when making offers or when accepting offers on which loan has the most strength. But overall, that's the appraisal process. There's not a whole lot you're going to do from a buyer's side. It's going to be in your agent's hand to make sure they help negotiate and structure the process, getting access, showing up with the appraiser, offering anything that they need, and helping as much as possible. And then from the listing side, again, putting that appraisal package together to make sure that they have all the information you think should be relevant to justifying value. But if you have any questions, you can always reach out directly. But now that we're in the appraisal process, I just kind of want to give you an overarching view of how that takes place, how I communicate it, and what you can do to impact.